Chosen one, something's changed in you, and not just on the outside. This isn't about a haircut or a new wardrobe. This is a soul-level shift, and it's loud, even in silence. You used to bend, used to shrink yourself just to make others feel tall. You wore that people-pleasing smile like armor, but underneath, your spirit was screaming. Now, that version of you is gone, buried, returned to the dust, and in its place stands someone undeniable, unshakable, unapologetic. They feel it when you walk into a room, the weight of your energy, the new posture of your presence. Your silence used to be submission. Now it's power. Let them squint. Let them whisper. Let them scramble to figure out how you became. This, because you're no longer available for disrespect. No longer interested in fitting into the box they built to contain your greatness. You're done contorting, done explaining, done bleeding for people who only came to feed. This isn't rebellion, it's revelation. You remembered who you are, and when a chosen one remembers who they are, everything shifts. They call it selfish, but boundaries are not betrayal. They call it cold, but peace. Peace is sacred, and baby, you've earned yours. You don't owe them a warning or a goodbye. Just keep walking, head high, spirit clean, purpose sharp. This video is for you. The one who's tired of shrinking. The one who finally said enough. The one who didn't just glow up, you grew up. And now you're moving different, living louder, loving yourself deeper. So if this message speaks to you, comment 777 below, subscribe, because this isn't just a phase. This is your becoming. You know what's got them shook? You're no longer flinching, no longer apologizing for your truth, no longer dancing around their comfort zones, because something in you snapped, or maybe it awakened. There's an electricity now, running through your veins like firewater. It's in your eyes, it's in your stride, it's in the way you hold silence longer than you used to, like a sword drawn but not yet swung. They feel it, oh they do, that shift in your DNA. That invisible but undeniable transformation that's happening on a cellular level. They sensed it the moment you walked through the door. See, before they were used to the version of you that shrank, that played small, that smiled when hurting and nodded when breaking. But now, you speak and your voice doesn't shake. You stand and your spine doesn't bend. You're no longer available for manipulation, guilt-tripping, or codependent performances. The old you, that version of you who would twist and fold to make others more comfortable, gone. Gone like a vapor, evaporated into the cosmos, never to return. They used to thrive on your silence, on your willingness to absorb their drama, their projections. You were the emotional sponge, soaking in their toxins while quietly drowning. But now your energy is loud, not noisy, loud. It radiates like gamma rays. Penetrating, unapologetic, impossible to block. It's the kind of presence that makes people squint when you walk in. Because your light is too real for their comfort. Your authenticity is too raw for their games. You're not angry, you're aligned. And that's what they can't handle. Because they were counting on you staying confused. Counting on you needing their approval. Banking on you being too afraid to evolve without their permission. But you evolved anyway. Your glow-up wasn't just physical, it was spiritual, emotional, energetic. They expected a makeover. What they got was a metamorphosis. You're not here to fit in anymore. You're here to resonate, to walk in rooms and alter frequencies. And let's be honest, you're not even trying. That's what terrifies them most. They see you and suddenly their manipulation seems small. Their opinions, irrelevant. Their games, transparent. You didn't need revenge. You just needed to remember your value, and the moment you did, they lost all access. Let's pause for a second, because I know what some of you are feeling. That discomfort that comes when you start choosing yourself. That guilt that tries to whisper, but what if they think I've changed? Here's the truth, you have changed, and that's the point. Like a phoenix, you let the fire burn away what no longer served you. And what rose from those ashes? Power, clarity, peace. They didn't think you'd do it, didn't think you had it in you. They thought their absence would break you, their silence would weaken you, Their slander would stop you, but instead it refined you, sharpened you, made you dangerous. Not because you seek to harm, but because you now move with discernment. You now recognize patterns you once ignored. You spot red flags from miles away, and you no longer beg for crumbs from tables where you were always the feast. People are confused. Why are they so distant now? Why don't they call back like they used to? Why are they suddenly so unbothered? Because you finally chose yourself, not in a selfish way, in a sacred way. You stopped bleeding for people who wouldn't even offer a bandage. You stopped showing up to be drained. You stopped overextending for those who saw your kindness as a weakness. And now they don't know what to do with you, because the version of you that tolerated mistreatment doesn't live here anymore. Let me say this clearly. This new energy isn't temporary. This isn't a phase. This is your new standard, your rebirth, your truth. And yes, they'll try to guilt trip you, try to provoke you, try to gaslight you into becoming that old version again. But here's the power you now carry. You don't engage. You don't flinch. You don't chase. You observe and detach. That's when you know your healing is real. You're not here to explain your growth to people committed to misunderstanding it. You're not obligated to water down your essence to soothe someone else's insecurities. You don't owe anyone the old you, just because they're uncomfortable with your evolution. And if they panic, that's on them. You've got places to go, versions of yourself yet to meet, heights still waiting to be reached, and you can't afford to carry dead weight on your way up. So take a breath, look in the mirror. This is you now, whole, worthy, unapologetically chosen. And this is only the beginning. So now you're walking different, talking different, living different. And it's not just in your words, it's in your energy. Loud energy. Not the type that demands attention, but the kind that commands it. See, people feel your presence before you say a word, because your spirit now enters rooms before your body does. And let's be real, they're not used to that. They were used to the you who played it small, the you who dimmed your light so no one else would feel insecure, the you who made yourself less so others could feel like more. But now you walk in like you know who you are, and that shifts the entire atmosphere. You're not arrogant, you're aware. There's a difference, and that difference is what's driving them crazy, because for the first time, maybe ever, you're not asking for permission to exist. You're not checking their faces for approval before you speak your mind. You're not bracing for the backlash, because now you can handle it. They don't know what to do with this new you. The one who stands tall and still, the one who lets silence speak for them. The one who no longer takes the bait, because that's what they're throwing at you now, isn't it? Bait. Guilt trips, snide comments, backhanded compliments, little jabs dressed as jokes. They're trying to provoke you, to get a reaction, to see if the old version of you is still buried in eat somewhere. But here's the plot twist. You're not triggered. You're not explaining. You're not defending. You're not performing. You just exist peacefully, powerfully present. And that calm, it's unnerving to them. Because for so long, your peace was their playground. They used your kindness like a doormat. They saw your empathy as a weakness, and they relied on your silence to keep their power intact. But now the roles are reversed. Now your silence is strength. Your calm is unsettling. Your boundaries are like iron gates, and they're on the outside knocking, begging for access to a version of you that no longer lives here. It's wild, isn't it? The same people who mocked your growth, now studying your every move. The same ones who called you too sensitive or too much, now obsessed with your glow, trying to decode it, trying to reverse engineer the results without doing any of the internal work you had to do. But here's what they don't get. You didn't just level up, you broke through. You went into the dark, faced the parts of yourself you didn't want to see, sat with the pain, let it teach you, let it stretch you, let it make you new. And now that you've emerged, you're not interested in going backward. There's no version of you still trying to fit into that old mold. There's no desire left to explain yourself to people who only came to drain you. Let them talk, let them question, let them whisper. You're too focused on alignment now, too busy becoming. And listen, there's something else we need to acknowledge here. They're not just confused, they're intimidated, because they can't control someone who knows their worth. They can't guilt someone who has healed their wounds. They can't manipulate someone who's no longer afraid to be alone. You see the difference now, don't you? What used to feel like abandonment now feels like protection. What used to feel like rejection now feels like redirection. Because the absence of certain people made space for your presence. Your own, fully, finally. And maybe for the first time in your life, you're not trying to be liked. You're trying to be authentic. No more masks. No more code switching just to survive. No more bending into awkward shapes to earn someone's love. That wasn't love. That was control. And now you know better. You understand that real love doesn't require you to lose yourself. Real support doesn't demand your silence. Real friendship doesn't come with strings. Real connection doesn't feel like a weight. So you cut ties. Quietly, cleanly, not out of bitterness but out of clarity. You realize some people weren't friends. They were just benefiting from your confusion, from your low self-worth, from your emotional labor. But now that you've chosen yourself, now that you've stepped into your light, they call it selfish. Let them, because here's the truth. The version of you who sacrificed your peace to keep others happy, they didn't appreciate you. They just got used to you. Used to having access, used to having power, used to having control. So of course they're mad now. Of course they're calling you changed. That's because you did change. Like a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. Like the earth becomes spring again. Like stars are born from collapsing galaxies. Violently, beautifully, unstoppably. And now you're here. Evolved, rooted, real. And guess what? You don't owe anyone an explanation for becoming who God designed you to be. So take a breath. Let it fill you with fire. Because you've earned this evolution. This peace you walk in. It's sacred. This power you carry, it's divine. This presence you radiate, it's the evidence that you made it. And we're just getting started. Let's hold a moment of silence for the old you. Yes. That version of you who kept quiet to keep the peace, who said yes when your soul screamed no, who carried the weight of everyone else's emotions while neglecting your own. That version of you deserves a proper goodbye, because they're not coming back. No resurrection, no second chance for the doormat life. That chapter is over, sealed in sacred stillness. You've held space for everyone else. Now it's time to hold space for your own evolution. Let's be real about something most won't admit. They didn't just get used to your kindness. They got comfortable in your submission, built their convenience on the back of your discomfort, lived large while you stayed small, made moves while you made sacrifices, fed their ego while your spirit starved. But you kept showing up, kept giving, kept loving, kept over-delivering, thinking that one day they'd see your worth. But they didn't. Because people rarely value what they're allowed to drain for free. And now that you've pulled the plug on the energy leak, they're scrambling because the foundation of their comfort was you, your emotional labor, your silence, your forgiveness on demand, your unpaid therapy, your it's okay when it wasn't, your reliability even when they were reckless. They relied on your self-sacrifice like it was a utility, but forgot you were a human being. And now that you've stopped absorbing their chaos, they don't know how to function. Let that sink in. They're not hurting because you hurt them. They're hurting because you stopped hurting for them. There's a difference. You see, before you woke up, they fed off your guilt, off your need to prove your love. They created emergencies just to summon your attention. Weaponized silence. Held forgiveness like a trophy they refused to hand over. But not anymore. Now when they call, it goes to voicemail. Now when they send flying monkeys, you don't even flinch. Now when they try to bait you with drama, you're unmoved, unbothered, untouched, because you've upgraded your emotional security system. You're not reacting, you're protecting. And let's be clear, you're not cold, you're healed. You're not bitter, you're boundaried. You're not mean, you're wise. This isn't revenge, this is resurrection. And the old you, they needed to be laid to rest. Let's talk about that version. The one who apologized for having needs, who asked for so little and still felt guilty about it, who showed up even when you were breaking, who said, "I'm fine," through a cracked voice and tired eyes, who poured out your last drop of energy and smiled like it didn't hurt. That version of you was never weak. They were sacred. They were survival. They were the bridge between your trauma and your truth. They got you here. but they don't need to go with you any further. So now, we honor them, we thank them, and we let them go. Because you've stepped into a new realm. One where your worth is no longer negotiable. One where your peace is non-refundable. One where your presence is earned, not assumed. You've stopped making excuses for people who never made the effort. You've stopped handing out access like candy to those who only came to take. You've stopped explaining your soul to those who lack the depth to understand it. Let's get even more honest. Some of them were never confused. They knew your value. They just hoped you didn't. Because an unaware chosen one is easy to manipulate. But an awakened chosen one? Untouchable. They never thought you'd reach this level of clarity. They thought the hooks they planted, shame, guilt, fear of abandonment, would keep you bound forever. Bound. But you removed every one, and now they're watching your glow up through gritted teeth. Not just because you're rising, but because they know they no longer have a seat at your table. You didn't ghost them, you grew past them. And that stings, because they were counting on the idea that you'd always be too broken to walk away. But broken things heal, cracked places get mended, and shattered pieces can be reforged into something stronger than before. So if you've ever wondered if it was too late, hear this now. It's never too late to reclaim your power, to redefine your worth, to rise from the ashes of who you were into the full fire of who you're becoming. This isn't a phase, it's a funeral and a rebirth. You don't owe them one last conversation. You don't owe them a closure moment. You don't owe them understanding. You owe yourself peace, and you're finally giving it. Not just in moments, but as your default setting. Now your peace is your boundary, your glow is your response, your absence is your answer. Let them wonder, let them gossip, let them reach for a version of you that doesn't exist anymore, because you've moved on. And the elevation is real. Keep going. So now you've set boundaries, and suddenly you're the villain. Isn't it funny how the moment you stop breaking your back for others, they say you've changed? As if evolution is betrayal. As if choosing peace over people-pleasing is some kind of personal attack. But let me say it plain. You didn't change to hurt anyone. You changed because staying the same was hurting you. That's the part they don't talk about. That's the part they don't want to admit. Because for so long, they benefited from your silence, your compliance, your ability to absorb blows and still show up smiling. Now you say no, and they call it attitude. Now you set limits and they say you're distant. Now you don't bend and suddenly you're not who you used to be. Exactly, that's the point. You outgrew the cage they built around your identity. And instead of celebrating your freedom, they resent it. They don't know what to do with someone who refuses to shrink. Because they had a whole system, a script you were supposed to follow. Smile here, agree there. Don't speak up, don't ask for more. Stay in your place, but you tossed the script in the fire. Burned it page by page, and rewrote your own story. Now, they're panicking, because their access is gone. The emotional control, gone. The guilt levers, disabled. The what's wrong with you tactics, ineffective. They used to pull strings and watch you dance. Now those strings are cut, and you're walking like royalty. And it's driving them crazy, because what power do they have if they can't make you doubt yourself? None. What do they hold if their approval no longer moves you? Nothing. They're trying to keep you in a role you've already outgrown, trying to hold a funeral for your freedom with flowers you didn't ask for. But here's what they don't understand. You're not angry, you're just not available. There's no malice in your silence, just maturity. There's no rage in your distance, just wisdom. And there's no bitterness in your boundaries, just balance. Let them call it what they want. Let them label your growth as rebellion. Let them paint you as cold, hard, mean. It's not your job to convince people that healing isn't hostility. Let them misread your peace as pride. Let them misunderstand your power as arrogance. You're no longer here to be understood. You're here to be aligned. Let them feel the difference. Because this time, you're not bending for comfort. You're standing in truth. And the truth is they're uncomfortable because your boundaries expose their entitlement. You were never supposed to speak up. Never supposed to walk away, never supposed to realize how rare you actually are. But you did, and that realization, that changed everything. Because now you know, not everyone deserves access. Not everyone gets a seat at your table. Not everyone should be that close to your energy. You've learned the difference between love and attachment, between obligation and loyalty, between duty and sacrifice, and you finally see it clearly. Your love should never cost you your sanity. Your support should not bankrupt your soul. Your presence is not a payment for someone else's peace. So you stopped overextending, stopped over-explaining, stopped overcompensating for people who never met you halfway. Now you give from overflow, not depletion. Now you speak from truth, not tension. Now you love from clarity, not codependency. And guess what? That version of you is magnetic, because it's whole, not performative, not afraid, not seeking applause or validation. You're not chasing healing anymore, you are healing, embodied. You've become the proof that a person can walk away from dysfunction and never look back. The glow up, it's not just visible, it's vibrational. Your voice carries differently. Your presence lands differently. Your laughter feels unforced. Your rest is real now. They can feel it in the air when you walk in, that aura that says, I love myself enough not to entertain what drains me. And people who aren't used to that kind of strength, they'll call it selfish. They'll call it heartless. They'll call it fake. Because labeling your growth is easier than admitting they never expected you to grow. They thought you'd stay broken. They thought you'd stay begging. They thought you'd never stop trying to earn the bare minimum. But they miscalculated. Your kindness was never weakness, it was strategy. You gave people a chance. You gave them grace. You gave them space to rise. And when they didn't, you gave yourself permission to walk away. Now they call it cold, but they had the warmth. They just didn't know what to do with it. So when you took it back, when you reclaimed your time, your worth, your dignity, they felt the freeze. That's not your fault, that's the consequence. You're not being harsh, you're being whole. And wholeness doesn't shrink, so let them panic. Let them project. Let them spin stories in rooms you no longer enter. Your only response? Peace. Your only energy? Forward. Because boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're gates that guard sacred ground. And you, chosen one, you've become sacred ground while they're busy panicking. Others are watching. Silently, carefully, obsessively. People who once rolled their eyes at your dreams. Now they're watching your every move like scholars studying ancient scrolls. They're replaying your story, trying to decode your glow, trying to figure out how you did it. Because here's what they can't deny. You're walking different now, and the results are starting to show, not just in your words, but in your life. Your relationships are more peaceful. Your circle? Smaller, yes, but so much richer. Your energy doesn't feel scattered anymore. It feels focused. You're not posting every detail. You're not explaining your shifts. You're not announcing the process. You're just executing quietly. And that silence? It's deafening to those who underestimated you. They're taking notes now, trying to reverse engineer your freedom, wishing they could skip the pain and keep the shine, studying you like you're a formula, hoping they can imitate the end without ever facing the fire that refined you. But here's the truth. What you carry didn't come from convenience. It came from confrontation with yourself, with your wounds, with the lies you believed, with the identities you inherited but never asked for. And that kind of growth, you can't fake it. You can't copy it. You can't microwave it. You earn it in the shadows, in the silence, in the seasons where no one's clapping but you keep building anyway. You were working when they were watching Netflix. You were healing while they were gossiping. You were crying on your knees while they were scrolling. You were learning how to breathe through the burn. And now, you're the one they mention in rooms you've never been in. You're the one they bring up at dinner tables with half-truths and full curiosity. You're the one they whisper about, not out of scandal but out of shock. Because the version of you they knew wasn't supposed to make it here. They don't know how to talk about this evolved you. This grounded, clear, unapologetic version that radiates power without saying a single word. But let's pause for a second. Because you didn't evolve to prove them wrong. You evolved to prove yourself right. You did it because you were tired of betraying your soul just to keep the peace. This glow, this peace, this energy, it's not a performance. It's the evidence of alignment. You've stopped seeking applause from people who never clapped. Stopped begging for closure from people who were never open. Stopped carrying conversations where your spirit wasn't welcome. And as you pulled back, as you prioritized your inner world over their outer expectations, the shift began. You became the one who doesn't chase, but attracts. The one who doesn't explain, but embodies. And you're attracting more than just attention. You're attracting alignment, the right people, the ones who see your light and don't feel threatened, the ones who respect your boundaries without testing them, the ones who pour into you without keeping score. That's what real connection feels like. No tension, no confusion, no ego battles, just clarity, mutuality, peace. And yes, while the right ones are being drawn to your light, the wrong ones are still trying to dim it. Don't be surprised. The same people who once ignored your potential are now trying to attach themselves to your platform. The ones who laughed at your struggle now want to collaborate. The ones who dismissed your spirit now quote your words and pretend they always believed in you. But you remember, and your spirit knows, not everyone watching is cheering. Some are watching to see if you'll fall, to see if the glow is temporary, to see if the power was rented or earned. Don't give them a show, give them silence. Let your results speak. Let your peace preach. Let your stability stun them. Because your biggest flex isn't your success, it's your stillness. They threw stones and you built an altar. They tried to distract you and you built discipline. They told you who you couldn't be, and you became more. And now they watch from the sidelines, faces tight with regret, mouths full of confusion, hearts wrestling with the truth. You were the one the whole time. They just didn't recognize you because you didn't come in the package they expected. You didn't beg. You didn't broadcast. You just kept becoming. And now they're obsessed, trying to mimic your tone, trying to imitate your language, trying to dress like you, sound like you, even move like you. But there's one thing they can't copy, your pain, because that's what made you powerful. Not just the joy, not just the prayers, not just the affirmations, but the process, the breaking, the rebuilding, the stretching, the surrender. And that's not available on YouTube. That's not on a Pinterest board. That's not a one-click course. That was earned in the wilderness, in the silence, in the late nights when no one checked on you but heaven still whispered, "Keep going." And you did. So let them watch, let them wonder, let them try to figure it out. You don't owe anyone access just because they're curious. Let them analyze from afar. Let them ask the universe how you did it. Let them sit in the discomfort of not being invited back in. Because your life now, it's sacred space, and access is by discernment only. Let's make one thing crystal clear. They no longer have access. Not to your time, not to your energy, not to your softness, not to your spirit. That all-access pass they once abused, revoked. Because now, you've elevated, and not everyone gets to come with you. Some of them thought it was a phase, thought your silence was temporary, thought you'd cool off and return to the role they cast you in. But this isn't a phase. This is a homecoming to yourself, to your worth, to your divinely appointed identity. You didn't just walk away, you ascended. And when you ascend, not everyone can breathe at your altitude. So now they're reaching out, suddenly remembering your number, suddenly feeling led to reconnect, suddenly realizing how special your connection was. How convenient. They're showing up with recycled promises and performative apologies, thinking you'll fall for the old script again. But this time, you don't respond. Not out of spite, not out of bitterness, but because their chapter is closed. No explanation needed, no dramatic closure scene, no tearful confrontation. You just stopped participating in your own mistreatment. And that alone, that's power. They're confused by your calm, disturbed by your stillness, shaken by your silence. Because before, they had you conditioned to react, to chase, to explain, to fix. But now your silence is louder than their manipulation. Your absence more impactful than their presence. They send a text, you leave it on read. They call, it goes to voicemail. They create chaos. You don't respond, you rise. Because what they never expected was for you to heal so completely that their voice no longer echoes in your spirit. That's the part they can't wrap their heads around. You were their safety net, their emotional crutch, their backup plan. But you're not available for dysfunction anymore. You've stopped entertaining trauma disguised as loyalty. You've stopped confusing effort with investment. You've stopped making space for people who never valued the invitation. And now, your peace is locked behind boundaries, and boundaries are sacred. Let's talk about that, because someone needs to hear it. Boundaries are not rejection. They are protection, not punishment, preservation. You're not shutting people out, you're keeping your spirit clean. Because once you've done the inner work, once you've tasted peace that isn't performative, validation that doesn't come from chaos, you get selective, protective, not out of fear, but out of respect for the work it took to get here. Some people think they deserve a second chance just because they finally feel the absence of your presence. But they had their chance when you were kind, when you were soft, when you were still breaking yourself just to keep others whole. And they mishandled it. So now, they get distance, not access. They get to witness the new you, but from outside the gates. And it burns, because they're not mourning you. They're mourning the version of themselves that only existed when they had access to your energy. You made them feel powerful, important, in control. Now they're powerless, because your energy isn't theirs to control. They thought you'd always be available, that no matter what they did, you'd still show up, still answer, still forgive without change, still fix without effort, still stay without respect. But that was the old you. This new you don't respond to bait. You don't justify your peace. You don't explain your exit. You just exit. Cleanly, quietly, unapologetically. And now they're trying everything. Flying monkeys, mutual friends, rumors, emotional emergencies, anything to pull you back into orbit. But here's the difference. You've built a new universe. And in this universe, they don't exist. You filled it with light, peace, God, purpose, healing. And there's no room for people who only came to consume. You finally realized you're not hard to love. You were just surrounded by people unequipped to do it right. And once you got that clarity, everything changed. The doors started closing. And not because you were cold, but because you got warm enough to stop letting others steal your fire. You learned to bless people from a distance, to love them in slints, to forgive them without giving them another opportunity to wound you. You healed, not so they could come back, but so they couldn't control you when they tried. And now, they're on the outside looking in, pressed, perplexed, powerless. And you're free, because true power doesn't need an audience. True healing doesn't beg to be seen, it just is. You carry peace now like armor. Move like someone who knows their value. Speak only when it adds to your soul's integrity. And rest fully in the truth that you owe nothing to anyone who had access to the old you and failed to honor it. Let them wrestle. Let them regret. Let them watch. Access is a privilege, and not everyone qualifies. They keep staring, trying to figure out what's different. Is it your hair, your weight, your clothes? They'll never figure it out. Because the real change, it's internal. You didn't just glow up, you grew up. And when the soul matures, the entire atmosphere around you shifts. You're moving different now, not to impress, not to provoke, but because peace has changed your posture. There's a calm in your spirit that makes noise without ever raising its voice. They see it, they feel it, even if they can't name it, and it's driving them crazy. Because what they're sensing is a kind of confidence that can't be faked. It wasn't purchased. It wasn't posted. It was earned. In the fire, in the silence, in the late-night battles nobody saw. You didn't get this peace by accident. You fought for it. And now, your life reflects it. Let's talk about it. Your finances, they're shifting. Not because you're chasing money, but because you're finally aligned with your worth. You're no longer accepting less just to make others feel more comfortable. No more undercharging, no more over-delivering, no more justifying why your value costs what it costs. Because you're not desperate anymore, you're discerning. You know the difference between an opportunity and a trap dressed as one. And so does the universe. So now money flows to you differently, not as a reward, but as a response to your boundaries, to your clarity, to your alignment. You're not hustling like you used to, you're attracting. Now let's talk about your mindset. You used to be overwhelmed, anxious, second-guessing every move, tied up in the opinions of people who didn't even know how to love themselves. Now, your mind is still, sharp, clear. You're not overthinking your worth anymore. You're not explaining your standards. You're not lowering your vibration just to be accepted by those who never deserved your presence. That mental freedom? It's the real flex. Now, when problems arise, you don't spiral. You breathe, you assess, you respond instead of react. That's evolution. And your appearance? Yes, that's shifted too. But not because you tried to look different. It's because confidence looks good on you. That quiet knowing, that grounded self-trust, that glow from within that can't be bought. It shows up in everything. The way you stand, the way you walk, the way you make eye contact without flinching. You're not hiding anymore. You're not asking for permission to take up space. You're not shrinking to make others comfortable. You're here, fully, finally, and you look like peace. You move like power. You speak like purpose. They don't know how to name it, so they say things like, "You look good. Something's different about you." You're glowing, but it's not your clothes, it's not your skin, it's not your hair. It's your energy. You're radiating the afterglow of healing, of choosing yourself, of breaking cycles, of finally walking in the direction your soul has been pulling you toward for years. And yes, they're still watching. Some with awe, some with envy, some with confusion. But they're watching because you've become a living testimony. Proof that it's possible to rise after being torn apart, to evolve without making noise, to become whole without making announcements. Your transformation, it's real, and it's inspiring the right ones while unsettling the wrong ones. Because here's what's hard to accept. Most people don't really want you to grow. They want you to stay small, manageable, familiar. They were comfortable with your insecurity. They were empowered by your confusion. They were validated by your need for them. But now, you need no one's permission, no one's approval, no one's applause. You've stepped into your divine identity and it fits. And what does that do? It exposes those who never evolved, those who chose gossip over growth, ego over healing, stagnation over surrender. Now they feel exposed by your progress, not because you're flaunting anything, but because your very being has become a mirror showing them who they could have been if they'd done the work. But you didn't evolve to make a statement. You evolved to make space for peace, for purpose, for power. And now that you have it, you're not negotiating it. They can whisper, they can question, they can speculate. You're unbothered because your glow, it's not for them, it's for you. A reminder that you survived what should have broken you, that you found yourself in the wreckage, that you chose truth over comfort. And now, you're becoming everything they said you couldn't be, not out of revenge, but out of revelation. Because now you know who you are, and that changes everything. Chosen one, this version of you, it's not a moment, it's a movement. This isn't a glow-up, this is a resurrection. You didn't just walk away from toxic people. You buried the version of you who tolerated them. And in that sacred burial, something divine was born. Not louder, not flashier, just realer. Now you stand in spaces that used to shake you, with a stillness they can't explain. Now you say no without guilt. Now you rest without apology. Now you thrive without broadcasting every step. You've gone from seeking validation to walking in revelation. And the ones who used to mock your softness, they're haunted by your strength. Because here's what they never understood. You weren't weak. You were reserved. You weren't naive. You were compassionate. But now that compassion has boundaries. And your silence, it has weight. So no, there's no going back. No returning to the roles they wrote for you. No shrinking to fit their comfort. No overgiving just to feel seen. From here on out, it's alignment or nothing. You've tasted peace. You've embodied power. You've touched the divine inside yourself. And now, you protect it. You honor it. You live like you believe in it. So wherever you go from here, go forward, relentlessly, unapologetically. Don't waste time trying to convince the ones who never saw you. Let them wrestle with your absence. Let them learn from the silence. You've already said everything you needed to say, just by becoming. And if this message found your soul today, if you felt this shift in your bones, if you know deep down that this is your time, then drop A in the comments below. Let the world know you didn't just change. You came back to life, and it looks good on you. Subscribe now. Join this tribe of the awakened, because we're not going back. We are going higher.